And then, believe it or not, I wrote the entire thing from the back of the slate that was there at the back of my mind. I was born 1 month before the British left us.
Hello and a very warm welcome to Great Principles. I am Seema Choria. Today, we bring you another legendary figure from the world of Indian academia, Mr. G. Jayaprakash Rao, former principal, Anubhuti International School, Jalgaon. Our eminent guest today is an educationist who hails from a family of teachers and has had likes of J. Krishnamurthy, Dr. U.R. Anandamurthy, Dr. Rajiv Taranath, Dr. Dandapani, and Ms. Ahalya Chari to kindle the fire of scholastic principles. When you work so closely with the proponents of education, nothing less than exemplary is bound to happen. I'm so filled with admiration to be in conversation with such an illustrious personality. I'll give you a brief of his background now. Mr. Jayaprakash sir was one of the first to be selected for the 4-year integrated course for teachers designed by NCERT, Mysore, 1965. He was immediately roped by Rishi Valley School, Chittor, Andhra Pradesh, where he met the legendary J. Krishnamurthy and experienced his teachings and philosophies firsthand. This was life-transforming phase, and JP sir stayed with Rishi Valley School for 25 years. His past two association has been with Rockwell International School and Anubhuti School in Jalgaon. In a nutshell, he has worked relentlessly to propel the holistic pedagogy and Gandhian principles of education. Jayaprakash sir has also closely worked with Ramalinga Raju, bygone Satyam Computers of Satyam Public School. Another feather in his cap is the Center for British Teachers, where he headed the International School Division and helped establish school, one being the renowned Rockwell International School. Currently, he is with Anubhuti International Residential School, Jalgaon, fulfilling yet another purpose. Sir, it's a great honor and privilege to welcome you to Great Principles, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much indeed. Thank you. Thank you.
Sir, we know that you hail from a family of teachers and you had such wonderful mentors, sir. So, but we would like to know from you about your childhood, your school life, and your initiation in the academic world.
Wow, wonderful. Thank you so much for sending me back to my childhood days, which I fondly remember. I remember my father and my mother were teachers. And in fact, my mother was not only a biological teacher, but also the intellectual teacher, my first teacher. I remember one thing that my mother taught me when I was young. And in those days, we had the slates and you wrote your alphabet, and then that's how you practiced. The very first thing that I have learned about myself, you take your mothers for granted, right? So, so it so happened that, I was not learning anything at all, nothing whatsoever. Probably I was fooling around, this and that. And the rest of the children were learning. She would write the alphabet and make them, write over it again and again and again and again. Probably it was not the way I should have learned, but that's how it was being taught in those days. One day she told me, she was very upset with me, and she said, look, you are not writing anything at all. What should I do? You know one thing? So she showed me one girl, one of my classmates there. She said, look at this girl, Indira. Even she has learned it. That word even, no, in my language, I think it sent a signal to me, my God, how can that be? Then I did something which I still remember very much. She said, I said to her, okay, I gave her the slate and said, okay, write everything. So she wrote all the alphabet, E, whatever. And then I closed my eyes, and then tears were rolling down my cheeks. I said, rub it out. So she said, yes, I rub it out. All that I did was I had taken a hard, quick look at it. And then, believe it or not, I wrote the entire thing from the back of the slate that was there at the back of my mind. And my mother was filled with joy on that day. So, and also I discovered something about myself. It was something probably as a child, and since I remember it even today, it must have made such a significant impact on me in my life. And my life began as a student that way. And then later on, I also had my father one day, when I was in class 2 or class 3, my father, it was in elementary school up to class 5. My father took me to class 5 and said, look, fellows, I'm asking him these questions, what I should ask him. So he asked me a few questions, which without hesitation, I was able to say it. And I could perceive the joy in my father's eyes too. And my father actually taught me much later also when I was in my high school class. In those days, SSLC was 11 years SSLC, class 10, class 11. And I remember something very similar that had happened in class 11 too. I was always a self-learner. I always believed in self-learning. Then my father used to give the children those days. It was a my first school was an elementary school in a little village. This was a slightly bigger village where we had the Zilla Parshad schools. And my father was the assistant headmaster, whatever. He was teaching us English at that time. And he would give us a few topics and then write the essay himself and then tell us to learn it by heart and then write it. I told him at that time, Daddy, please, you don't give anything. I will write it myself. You correct it and show me where I have made mistakes. Okay? So that was another great learning for me. And he never ever after that gave me what he was to give giving others. I would always write it on my own. So this is from the family side. And as far as my family is concerned, all of us are from the teaching community. My brothers, though they did not study much, you give them a seat and a few children, they will teach it. So that kind of a thing there was. Now, this legacy is being carried on by my daughter also. My daughter is a teacher of English, and she's teaching in a very reputed school, Sahyadri School in Pune. Now, from there, I should move to my college, right? My college days were again really, really great days, really great learning. And we had the likes of Dr. U.R. Anantamurthy, and funny Ms. Ahalya Chari, who was our principal at that time. And what a learning it was. And we had probably the best of the teachers that they handpicked from all over the country. And we had them all there. And the idea at that time was to ensure that teachers are not teaching just a particular subject. That the teacher must be exposed to everything that the child needs to learn. Learning was very, very important rather than teaching us. And at that time, we had this concept of multi-purpose schools. And the training that we had got was to be able to teach those children. It's a multi-purpose school. So we had learned not only how to teach English, but also how to teach social studies, economics, technology, agriculture. We had people teaching us all these things, right? And science. I had learned science too in my degree, though I was training to become a teacher of English. Yeah. So that was the approach, holistic approach to all living. And probably one of the rarest things that I would want to recount is we had the British Council sending us one of their teachers, and they sent one of the most renowned teachers to teach us English. And the first thing he did was, at that time, my fair lady came to Mysore, and then he said, look, I will pay for the whole thing. So he packed all of us and then took us to show us that film. right? My Fair Lady, because he was himself teaching us phonetics. And I don't know for what reason, I was very fond of him. He was very fond of me. And that is how my English began. Now we went from villages, small villages, where we hardly were able to speak a word of English. Whereas here, we were learning to become English teachers. And what English did we have? Almost nothing. And there are other boys who are teasing us also. My God, this fellow doesn't even know how to say this. Yeah, that hurt us. But then, when this teacher came to us, we learned so much from him. We learned so much. His name is Don Byrne. He's a legendary teacher. He taught not only in India, but also in Argentina and many other places where this took us. And I would also like to recall another very, very beautiful moment with Dr. Yoranantamurthy. Right? He was during his lifetime when he was teaching us, he was already very, very well-known figure, extremely well-known figure in the literary field. And he used to talk to us about his research and how he was, he did his research in Birmingham University. One day, he brought this actor, he brought him one day to school. And later on, he was also a parent of his two children studied in a school where I had worked. He was talking about his play, the play that he wrote called Yayati. Yeah, Yayati was a play that he had written. And the kind of interaction that we've had with him in that place, it opened up so much more than what mere literature can tell you, right? So this is how I've been exposed to as far as schooling and learning is concerned. We had never had somebody teaching us only a particular subject in a particular topic. Everything went beyond that. And that is how the entire thing got ingrained in us. The entire thing got ingrained in us. So my little school, to my high school, to my college, it had been the greatest learning point. I must also tell you one more thing. In a very practical way, when I joined Rishi Valley School, my first phase was only a learning experience. I was more a student there than a teacher. It was like that. There's so much to learn, so much experience that one needed to learn. And yet another one about cricket, I must tell you. When I joined college, we had our physical education teacher there, and they were playing cricket. I had not played cricket at all before that. And I was 18 years old at that time. The first time I was playing cricket. And then I told sir, can I also play cricket? He said, yes, why not? Then observe carefully. Then I observed. He looked at me and then said, do you want a bat? I said, sir, yes, I want to. And then he said, okay, pick up that bat. And he said, okay, I picked it up. And you stand like this. He told me how to take a stance. And then he said, when somebody bowls you, there are only two things you should learn in the beginning. And that is, you go forward if the ball is close to you and put a bat here. And if the ball is coming high up there, go backwards, cover your stance and put a bat like that and defend. That's all I want you to do, nothing more than this. Then I did the same thing for 2 weeks. At the end of 2 weeks, there was a cricket match. And he included me in the team. He said, you are not going to score any runs, you will only defend the ball, nothing else. And I was stunned. Who would get this opportunity? You play only for 2 weeks and you are already in the college cricket team. And then it looked as, I did not know my feet at that time. In that very particular match, I did not score much anyway, maybe 2, 4, 5 runs. I don't know how much I scored, but that was not significant. But they say that I took a catch. And the catch was so stunning that even a seasoned player may not be able to catch it like that. So my teacher recognized that talent in me and he continued me in that. So what I'm trying to say is that in my own life, it looked as though my first bits of learning have all been almost like instant kind of learning. I did not have to spend time to learn. And this somehow got ingrained in me, feeling I felt that even in the other kind of learning, one can do this. And one needs to promote that. Okay. Sorry, the name of that person is Girish Karnal.
Girish Karnal. All right.
Girish Karnad, yes. I'm sorry, I've got his name at this time. Okay, it was Girish Karnad he brought into the yes.
Sir, it seems that you had everything that we imagine today for our children, you know, getting best of the teachers, best of the school, best of who would have imagined in back those days getting a teacher from British Council to teach you phonetics.
Yes.
When I was in school, I was never introduced to phonetics. So I think
Okay.
you were, along with the ignite that you have within and genetically what you inherited, you also were fortunate enough to have great teachers and school in your life, sir.
Without any doubt, and I was so fortunate. I was so fortunate. Even as recent as 2009, when I joined this school, Anubhuti School, I had this great opportunity of staying with Dr. Bhavarlal Ji Jain, right? And so much to learn from him, so much to learn from him. What a, I don't know, I'm very fortunate.
Along with great mentors, we also need, you know, the spark to learn. You should be always open to learn.
Absolutely.
That is the biggest trait I think you have, and you are all, still on the journey of continuous learning.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So it was such a beautiful journey, and really we enjoyed every incident that you narrated here. So going ahead, sir. So you have, like, you know, some legends are in institutions in themselves, and you have crafted and drafted the fire of knowledge. So you are one such legend now. So according to you, what is the best learning philosophy you believe in? And how has that changed you as a person?
Without any hesitation, and experiential learning, as people say, is probably the best, and I would promote that to the fullest. And as my school, the very name is Anubhuti, right? Experience. And then we believe in that, and that is something that I think I have also learned all through my life. Experience and learn, experience and learn. And I'm not discounting the way you learn from your books, your way from your teachers. I'm not discounting that. But the essence should be to experience it. The experiencing means learning itself. It is not separate from learning. Learning is not separate from experiencing. They're one and the same. Okay, so I believe very strongly in this. Now, that's why I don't like teachers, you know, who always say, hey, take your textbook, read from there, and at the end of this textbook, you have those questions, answer them, you write it correctly. If you don't write it, I'll give you punishment. My God. My God. So I tell my teachers, please. And another very, on the same lines, when I went to Rishi Valley School for the first time, right, the first thing I asked the person who's supposed to take care of me, my mentor, I asked her, so what shall I teach? She told me, I teach English. I said, of course I'll teach English, but what do I teach? Whatever you can teach. Get it? Whatever you can teach. Are there no textbooks? No textbooks.
Wow.
No textbooks. And then what do I do? Speak to them, you will know what they will have to learn. Got what I'm saying? And what a delight it was. And that is how I became a learner myself. And they have such huge resources. I had an American also along with me, who was the head of the junior school at that time, under whom I worked. He showed me, JP, you have this material here, this material here, these are the books where you can get this from. That's it. That's it. And then I asked, do I have to write lesson plans, this and that? Huh? They don't understand that. Okay, so this is how I learned a great deal. As a teacher, I was actually a learner.
Making them children more inquisitive, like asking question, what if? You know, which child, even it pushes the child to think critically. When we don't send him, put him in a structured box and let him learn through experience. So a very, very important point that, okay, so even after so many years, we are still emphasizing on the same thing, that experiential learning is the best. And entire India is talking about it today, and NEP and everything, it's all in the news. So sir has believed it from the very beginning, and this is what it is even today. So sir, on this note, we move on to our next question, sir. So you have witnessed education transforming, from years and decades, and you are the one who has seen how it has evolved. So we would like to know from here, how the teaching has evolved in years, and especially when you're talking about from traditional to digital. What would you say about this evolution and transformation?
Oh, well, yes. I must say in my own way that, when the British left us, I was born 1 month before the British left us. And we went to schools which were still following what they have left us behind with. Yeah, we were still following that. And I must tell you, my mother and her colleagues, many others, who had learned how to teach from these English teachers, they know, you should know that they have been told or taught how to prepare, say, teaching aids, right? And they would never believe in rote learning. They never believed in rote learning. Everything had to be experienced. Say, for example, my mother would pick up, seeds and little, stones for the younger children. For example, she would use that for counting, right? And she would teach us how to write on the sand, tactile touch, right? So likewise, the earlier system believed in giving the children experiential learning. That's exactly what I want to tell you. At least my parents had learned from that kind of an environment. Yeah. So from there, slowly we began to believe in textbooks, right? And then, teaching method also slowly changed. And you know that in India, again, we'll have to go into the Indian history too, our post-independence days. India was going through, a lot of difficulties financially and things like that. So one of the greatest things that had happened was the 5-year plans that Nehru had introduced, right? And every 5-year plan had definitely, touched on, or they emphasize on a certain area of development.
Right.
And by the time the third one came, the third 5-year plan came, we were very much interested in producing people on large scale. Our population began to grow very exponentially. And then they needed to start a lot of schools, a lot of colleges. This is where I feel that we made a little bit of a mistake. I'm not very sure if it's a mistake, but then it's an evolution, in fact. But then see, what had happened was we needed to have a lot of engineers, a lot of doctors, because the need of the country. And then what happened was there what is called fast tracking. The number of years you learn, the number of topics you learned in a certain time, they all need to be fast tracked. You have to be, then, from 5 years engineering, it came to 4 years engineering. And then the same thing happened with medicine too. So that fast tracking happened. Because that fast tracking, you had a lot of examinations to pass and then get into those colleges. And then the entire thing began to change from there. The methodology began to change from that need, right? Where no relaxing and teaching? It did not happen. It was ritual is a different thing altogether. You teach what you know. You teach them English. If you are teaching English, teach them English. Why do you need this? No. But on the other side, that's fast tracking had happened in the country. And then we needed to change methodology, and it was a need based. But today I'm very sure we can go back to our old ways.
Yes.
There was a change. There's different change even today. Unfortunately, because of these examinations, the mushrooming um, uh, tuition centers, my God, what I would say a lot of things have got ruined because of this. Even today, for example, no, we didn't have the examinations for class 10 and class 12 this year. Now you listen to the way the tuition centers are flourishing. Say, look, come, you join our tuition center. We will give you whatever you need for your engineering or doctor. As though that's the only thing to pursue in this world, in this life. So that way, most of our children and parents have got to have got sold to this kind of an idea. I don't like it at all. I don't like it one bit.
Absolutely, sir. But especially when it is a societal pressure, on the parents, this is how everyone start thinking. As suddenly the education started going on the basis of the design set of examination. So that was the pressure in the minds of society and parents also. What if my child doesn't pass? What if my child doesn't go through the university? What will he do? Because everyone was running just behind doctors, engineers, and that was a fad of that time, and that is what followed. And yes, pandemic did open the doors for the different opportunities, for the technology to come to the classroom, and the way you emphasized, learn the subject, learn the concept.
And it is coming, it's coming. I'm so happy. There's so many things that the present education policy has told us. And to give equal importance to all the subjects, my God, what a wonderful thing to think in those lines. And I remember there were days when they said, if you are good in mathematics, you are a good student. Whether you know your history or not, doesn't matter really. Right? So that kind of factory related kind of learning has to go from us. Industrialization cannot be any more background to our learning. No, it cannot be.
It cannot be. So we were just talking about examinations and grades. So you've been into education since so many years and worked with such great mentors. What would be an ideal education system according to you? Is there any possibility we could go away with gradings?
I don't want it one bit. Not one bit. I hate examinations for one simple reason, that they need not, one should not work for the examination, but one has to work to learn, to experience it. And examinations sometimes are very, very unfair too. And there are some children who are given the gift of remembering things, some children who are not given that gift, but they're being penalized, right? They're being penalized. The biological or psychological, feature or that quality of that child, if it's a little, then the child has lost. Right? And that's why I don't really want. And also, one more thing I just want to say. Now, what is this very great advantage? You have to enter the college within this particular year. You can't do it later. Isn't it very hard? If I want to be, if it's in me that I should become an IAS officer or something like that, why should these examinations be held within a certain age limit? For what? And that's what is happening here. And that's something which I don't like. I would like that kind of a system to go with. And if I'm learning sciences, later on I can't learn something else. If I'm learning commerce subjects, you can't take sciences later. I don't understand how this can happen. Anyway, those are lots of questions that we can question, but the world is too much for us. Now that I will accept, but you can always say this and hoping that something good will happen. But in that context, the present educational policy, I think, has something very good to give us. Very good.
they have given the options of choosing the syllabus. I mean, if you like
Absolutely.
bio, take bio, forget physics and chemistry.
Absolutely.
Choose accounts, forget
Absolutely.
economics. So that's a
And,
wonderful thing.
and also this God given March, April to write examinations from. Only then. As though that's a sacred month or something like that. Yeah. Right. And then as though you have to write it only in that particular time only. And everybody has to write at the same time only. I am really keen that people understand that the best thing is to allow the child to write when the child is ready. Be it September, be it August, be it March, be it May, what does it matter? When the child is ready, now I'm telling you, with this technology coming in there, that is possible. It is possible. I can take the examination when I'm ready to take it. And why not? And technology will help us. So I'm hoping that
But you know, sir,
the world will
current-
see that. Yeah.
Here, sir, I have one question to raise here because the
Please.
current generation, they won't sit for studies unless you tell them there is an exam. So
No, that is not the children's mistake. It's a mistake of the teacher or teaching system and our parents.
agreed, agreed.
It has nothing to do with the children. Children are absolutely innocent. They don't know what it is. It's all conditioning. We're conditioning the mind of the child right from the very beginning. Beta, you should become this. You should become that. So you have to do this. You have to do that. And forget. So when there is a mathematics examination, the father doesn't go to the office. He stays there and teaches the child.
So true, sir. Even I think even I talk like this. Study because you have exam. I don't talk that study because you have to learn.
Exactly.
Learning should, I can totally, truly relate with this, sir. And you are right, sir.
Thank
It's we who are making a mistake. It's not kids. It's
No
not them.
chance. No, child is innocent.
Right.
I will not blame the child for anything.
All right, sir. So hopefully if something like this can come in where children can say, all right, I'm ready, evaluate me. That
Yes.
would be, best. And when he himself puts him to evaluation, he will automatically work towards learning.
And
He will,
technology will help us.
technology will help us. Yes.
Right? You know one thing, these days you can ask, there is such a huge question bank that you choose and it will be there, it will give you the questions and you will be able to give the answers straight away there.
Right.
When the child is ready to do it, you do it. Because what after all is education? Do you have to do everything at the same time?
Mhm.
Right? It's not correct. It's not correct.
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah.
A wonderful thing if it could happen. And sure. It's, with the one.
It is with
With
hope
the-
that we live, right?
Yeah, who imagined that sitting here, we can book a cab and cab will come down, but it is happening.
Absolutely. Right?
It is happening. The
Yes.
food is coming at your place. So you can expect anything even in education.
Absolutely, yes.
So going ahead, sir, on this note, we reach to the very interesting segment of the show, which is called rapid fire round.
Okay.
Here, you have to answer in one word only.
Oh my God. Okay. Is it okay if I can ask some clarification and things like that?
Sorry?
Is it okay if I ask for a clarification or something?
Yeah, of course, of course.
Okay, all right, fine. Yes.
So this
go ahead.
one, the very first question would be tough for you, I guess. You have to name one person who was your key influencer.
Oh, there's no question about that. This is J. Krishnamurti, of course.
J. Krishnamurti, sir. All right. Are parents equally responsible for a child's education as schoolers?
Yes.
Yes. Is vocational education necessary in today's challenging times?
Yes.
Spare the rod and spoil the child, or break the rod and nurture the child. What
Break it.
sits with you?
Break it at the earliest.
Awesome.
I
Great.
don't have it at all.
All right. Brilliantly answered. Next question. What is the appropriate age to start schooling, pre-nursery, etc.?
Institutional learning only around 8 years or 9 years.
All right. And what about the preschools and toddlers?
Not institutionalize them. Make them homes, make them play areas. That's absolutely fine.
So
Provide
play dates.
opportunities.
So
Yeah.
learning in play date sort of environment. All right.
Yes, yes, that's it.
Which is more contemporary, pedagogy or andragogy?
Andragogy, this is where I really want to, say something, if you don't mind.
Please, sir. Please, sir.
You see, to me, pedagogy is absolutely fine, and it's also necessary at a certain time. And actually, they are evolutionary in that sense. You begin with pedagogy, and then it moves naturally into andragogy. Right? It moves naturally. It's actually a seamless transition. It's a seamless transition from here to there. And there also, now the only problem is that the age restrictions must be removed. There are some children who are able to get into the andragogy as early as 10 years. And there are some children who need about 18 years, 19 years. Right? So this must be a smooth transition rather than treating them as two very distinctly different kind of methods. No, it's one moves smoothly into the other. It should be a seamless movement. That's what I would like to see.
So this segment rapid fire was answered to very brilliantly by sir. In few words, we got a lot of insights. Now, sir, we have seen your academic achievements, and we also know that you are a sports enthusiast. You love cricket. Here, sir, I would like to know from you, the importance of hobbies in our life. What are your hobbies, and how do they help you, and how should we promote hobbies for our children too?
Make them play. Play and play and play. Look, I have always loved playing games. Yeah, I gave you one instance of my cricket in this one. Of course, I played my college till my school age. We didn't have many opportunities because I studied in very small schools, right? Not many opportunities were there. My only opportunity was in my school. I'm a very short fellow in my height. So, but I played volleyball. Volleyball is played by tall fellows.
Right.
So then, but there's one place even for short fellows where you take, receive, and then boost the ball, and the fellow is going to spike. So they took me for that in my school days, and I represented my school in volleyball. Okay, so that's one thing. Then of course I played a lot of cricket. I played hockey. I played football. I played all the games. My college was such a wonderful experience for me. Really wonderful experience. And we needed to impress girls, no? So go play tennis court with them, play throw ball with them, right? And they would love to have people like us, who are good at sports. So that way, it is not just a sport. It's a sport with emotional and social bonding. It's not something which is sport, exclusively sport kind of a thing, right? I played almost every game, and I represent my college in hockey and football too, right? And of course, I was my college cricket captain in my fourth year. And subsequently, after I became a teacher in Rishi Valley School, in Rishi Valley, like it happens in other places, one teacher is allowed to play with the children, right? So I used to be there permanently, actually. And then as part of that, when I was about 27 or 20 years old, I went for my Ranji selection too. Though I only represented one zone, I played for Andhra cricket, and our zone played against another zone. We lost, and I narrowly missed being selected for the cricket team. That is okay, but I was too old. 27, 28 years old is not the time you get into very high this kind of, and mainly because in Rishi Valley we did not promote competition of that time. So I was also in the same mode. So that's as far as cricket is concerned. But I must tell you, another thing that I probably don't know about it is I'm also a dancer. That is international folk dancer.
Wow.
Okay, international folk dancing. And I teach in international folk dancing, mainly Israeli dances mainly. Then Central European, American, and a few from us also. So I do teach international folk dancing. Yeah, I love singing. It's not just one single thing. I'm not just with one thing. There's so many other things. Okay,
So
But I enjoy my life.
we have a multifaceted personality amongst us. I think this short span wouldn't be enough to know the real Mr. G. J. Prakash Rao, sir. And so parents, here we have a very, very important message. Hey, don't stop them. Don't just let them be confined in the room full of, see, studies are important, but don't
Yes.
bombard them. Let them play. Even playing inculcates a lot of learning, team spirits and learning to be accepting defeats, accepting failures, and rising again. So let them play. And this is the where is Sir today, and believing in playing and along with putting emphasis on studies. So a very inspirational stories from Sir's journey. We have learned a lesson today that play.
And also drama. And also drama.
Drama.
I acted in plays too.
Plays too. So Sir is a
And,
dancer.
I'm also good at making children. One of the most creative things that I had done was to make children take a good story and then make the children write a script for it and use it as a puppet show. So I produced some very good plays, like what's that, Golden Goose, then The Ugly Duckling, then Alibaba and the 40 Thieves.
Yeah.
So like that, there's so many things you can do. In this, you are also teaching them English. You're not just saying you give the script and they will write. No, they will have to write the script. And while doing so, you are correcting their English and you're teaching them how to write, how to speak, enunciation, pronunciation, everything are doing it.
Right.
So it's a complete way of looking at the teaching, right? And you enjoy that. I've done enough of that too.
So making teaching fun, you need that creative edge and be a creative teacher, think out of box and see how children are grasping everything just like
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So on this note, we reach to the last question of the show, which is also called viewer's choice question. So you have this long journey and a very inspiring one. So which phase of this journey has your fondest memories, sir?
Oh, my first days in Rishi Valley School. My first days in Rishi Valley School. I must say that they were the ones. I still I feel very fortunate that I actually walked into Rishi Valley School, and my first days were fantastic. And they see I don't know how many of you know this. In a residential school, if the child is good in sports, he's accepted instantly. And then his life becomes far more easy than those who are only into intellectual things. They'll get teased and all that. But the one who is in the sports, yes. So my cricket has actually given me that foothold. And then because I began to play cricket and all that, and then I was accepted as one of the best cricketers, and so a lot of people used to praise and all that. So my big life began there, and then I'll give you one very small, very interesting episode, and this will tell you something about what happens. In my earlier days, we used to have, we used to eat, right? There in Rishi Valley, it's important that you ate everything that has been placed in your plate, because they feel that children, tend not to eat this, not to eat that. So they say, look, this at least you have to eat, and this small quantity. And then whatever you need, you can serve in more and more. So I used to have a few children, very young children, who used to take a long, long time. They would not worry about going to the next class, right? They would start sitting there. So what happened was, in the initial days, because I was very young also. As a teacher, I was the youngest in that school. And then so the teachers also became very fond of me. And I became very fond of them. And they said, look, sir, you are going to take care of these children. So I had these little brats, 5 or 6 of them, who would sit around, and then what would they do? They would not eat. They would start talking. They would just keep talking. They love talking. That's why they are late to eat. So, and listening to them, It's a great experience. I was not all that very good at English at that time, in that sense. And this is, we used to have children coming from very, very cultured backgrounds, very cultured backgrounds. And then they would speak beautiful English. I must tell you, one of the qualities I pride myself in, I learned from my children. I learned from my children and sit with them and learn so many things from them.
Right.
Yeah. So that those are my early years. This was before I got married and all that. And I used to take them for hikes, right? Walks, runs. Okay. So I spent probably the best part of my life in Rishi Valley, the first 5 to 6 years, and then later on getting in touch, meeting so many interesting personalities in the world. I must tell you, I don't know how many of you know, there's one Achyut Patwardhan. I don't know how many of you know him. He's a freedom fighter also, right? And he's a Gandhian. He lived with Gandhiji. And the kind of stories that he used to tell me, I must tell you, I'm so very fond of such things. And I also remember once Indira Gandhi came to school, and then we were preparing a great big ballet. We used to produce ballets, any number of ballets we used to produce. Every year at least one ballet for Krishnaji. And this ballet we were going to do for, again there, we were creating the whole thing and we were composing everything and doing things. And then we had chosen the theme of Karna, right? And then we had done so much about singing songs, so many things were there. And then somebody came and told me, look, this is not the best time for Indira Gandhi to see a play, anything like that, because she had just lost Sanjay Gandhi. There was a crash and he died. And then she was going through that. So this is not the best thing to do. Within no time, we changed the entire thing and then we did something else. Right? So when you are put into such kind of an environment, a creative mind can come up with something very great.
Right.
But somebody who is saddled with, no, this should be the only thing we can do, we cannot do anything else, it's gone. It's gone, right? And there also another thing that I learned there, Indira Gandhi was, she had addressed us, and Krishnaji also had addressed us. And then what happened? They were coming to move out. And what happened? There were a lot of, the press people, right? They were trying to take photographs. And then Indira Gandhi was saying, sir, press people want to take a photograph. And he puts his hand around her and says, they will wait for us. Let's go. We don't have time. The kind of affection, that kind of an affection that he is able to take the Prime Minister of India, right, put his hand around. And we were there. We were witness to the whole thing. I tell you, it's something that only a few of us can cherish such memories and then keep it in there. That's wonderful experiences.
Absolutely.
That's why I'm saying my first phase in Rishi Valley was one of the best. And these also, of course, Krishnamurti used to, in the beginning, I had a lot of young, at that time, very young. But then I would say something, say, oh, gentlemen, you come here, sit with me. So I would sit there with him, and then he had Alzheimer's. And then he would hold my hand with his hand and look at me like this and say, and then talk about things. Yeah. Oh, wonderful experiences, wonderful experiences.
No doubt, sir. Hearing the stories, I feel so good, and you were living with that.
But thank you for reminding me. I don't think I've shared all these things even with my wife and my children. I'm not very sure if I've done this. And thank you for taking me to such worlds. I'm so happy, so happy.
So, sir, today, hearing your inspiring story, I have found my spark. It is, I'm totally resonating with the famous quote of Mr. William Butler here, that education is not the filling of a pail, but it is the lightning of a fire. So
Absolutely.
go ahead, light this fire. This is what is Sir's story all about. And sir, I'm so thrilled and so fortunate to have got time to interact with you. And I'm really grateful for giving us this opportunity to hear your inspiring story. And now we will in turn help so many people to get inspired from your journey. So I thank you graciously for your sagacious company, sir. And it was really wonderful interacting with you, knowing your ideas, your visions, your thoughts, and the very first, the very first thing which I heard and which is still in my mind going on, that you told your teacher that, and who was your father also, that don't give me the script of the essay, let me create it. With such thoughts at young age, no doubt today you are a great teacher and the teacher who look forward to learn from students. No wonder, and even one more thing which I learned from today, that there was nothing wrong with our education system. It was very much that we are bringing in today, bring out the IGCSE curriculum, the IB curriculum. We are just going back to where we started, and then we talk about 100 years and nothing changed. So an amazing journey, and sir, I am really very happy to know you as a person. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.